enemy vows to attack. In exchange for mercy, we have been ordered to abandon this tower and swear fealty to their commander. I know I'm not the king you have awaited, but if you choose to stand with me and fight, this tower will no longer be a reminder of our frailty, but a symbol of our strength. Who will stand with me? Who among you will stand and fight?
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. Happy Monday, I guess. I mean, it is Monday after all, but I don't know that that's necessarily a happy thing. But we've got some great, interesting stories today. We've got some Netflix drama. We've got Rings of Power. We've got House of the Dragon. I've got all sorts of stuff for you. So hopefully you'll strap in and allow me to, well, help entertain you today. Now, the Rings of Power continues to, how would I say this, stink in a lot of ways. That it's interesting to me that, like, the media is finally starting to call some of this stuff out. In particular, you have stuff like this. Rings of Power is spending $60 million per episode. Again, per episode. And they spent none of it on writers. And also, there are copy-paste assets everywhere. They didn't even spend it on hiring more actors either. And by the way, we're not talking about like mainline actors. We're talking about extras. You could see the picture showing the three here, the same people. All these people are the same in all different areas. They just CGI'd them through. And you could see this too. This is a fun game. I marked in yellow some inconsistencies when they moved people from the front, but didn't even bother shrinking them to adjust for the distance. You could see here they have this guy here. I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, but they slide him in the back and they left him exactly the same size, even though he's 20 feet further in the back. You see they use the same person one time back here, 2 times, 3 times. You see like the same groups of people all reclumped. Now, obviously they do this type of thing for like orcs and when they have big grandiose shots, but this isn't even a big shot. This is 100 people tops, maybe 50 even. If you kind of squished them all together and you use like the right angle there. And then you're starting to see another. Eric Kane is doing a great job covering this over at Forbes. The Rings of Power is making a mockery of Tolkien's work. If someone were to adapt J.R.R. Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, in the same manner as Amazon is adapting its appendices, that version would go something like this. Rather than opening on the Shire and party and a visit from Gandalf, and rather than tell the tale of Frodo and his companions' fraught departure from their homeland, we would instead be introduced to 4 separate stories in the first half hour. Story 1, a fierce hobbit baker woman would encounter an orc and smack it down with her rolling pin. Then she'd gather the rest of the Shire to make for a ruined hobbit castle where she'd rally the hobbits and make a valiant last stand against the nearby ditch-digging orcs led by an evil hobbit with a striking resemblance to Lucius Malfoy. Story 2, Aragorn and a crack team of Gondor Rangers, go Gondor Rangers, would head for Mordor where they'd soon be captured, but Aragorn would be set free to take a message back to the people. Submit to Sauron or face extinction. Sauron is building a realm where evil will not merely survive but prosper after all. But Sauron would allow Aragorn to keep his weapons and armor. Story 3. Galadriel would set out from the Lothlorien bedecked in full plate armor as elves do. Bedecked in full plate armor as, of course, elves do, and head to Rohan, where she'd make quick work of Wormtongue and rally the raiders of Rohan to war. She'd be sure to show the warriors of Rohan how to sword fight while she was at it and impress everyone with both her fighting skills and her people skills. Story 4, Elrond would then send Legolas to the Lonely Mountain to enlist the aid of the dwarves, but in reality, he'd have a secret plan even Legolas wasn't aware of to trick the dwarves into giving him some precious jewels that would act as an EMP grenade against Nazguls or something. Each of the stories would be filled with mystery boxes. Aragorn would find a mysterious crown that wasn't actually a crown. The Hobbit Baker Lady would encounter a mysterious stranger who may or may not be a good guy or a bad guy, but it's almost certainly a guy, maybe. Whatever soon the Hobbits will be at war. That's the important thing, war. I mean, like from here, they would establish an adventure and blah, 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 blah. Galadriel's adventure would take her first to the ocean for a long swim, then to jungles, and even further southlands. Then the North Pole, where she would scornfully refuse advice from Santa Claus, who turns out to be a servant of Sauron. Finally, she'd make it to Rohan. I mean, like, it's pretty funny. It's you know, anyway, it's like the idea that it's just so bad. He continues, I've written, and read the full article, it's pretty funny. I've written at length about the many problems with Rings of Power, from its insufferable central protagonist to its abysmal writing. And I have other pieces of works about specific issues I have with the show. But I wanted to point out here just how un-Tolkien-like the storytelling itself is. I have done so much. I've done so with humor and exaggeration, but I hope you will take my meaning. The Lord of the Rings builds solely around a small group of characters. It takes time and carefully establishes its world and people. Much of its earlier chapters are spent on various charming friendships or encounters with ethereal elves who sing into the night. Only much later are the characters separated, or do we hear the drums of war. In adapting appendices, there's clearly more work to get done, from taking notes to narrative, as it were, and this doesn't even feel like Tolkien fan fiction. Even as a generic fantasy, it's utterly divorced from any whiff of Middle-earth. This is not good. Even if you strip Tolkien and his characters and world from the entirety and called Galadriel by a new name and made up a new villain entirely, this would still be badly paced, unpleasant gobbledygook with a few characters you care about or root for, and the plot that feels rushed and slow at the same time. Since no mention of rings has been made yet, it would also be quite easy to just insert a new character and place names and turn it into a generic fantasy, and it would still be pretty awful. It lacks the bones of a good story, for one thing. What is the spark that motivates our heroes to action? In The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf shows up with dire news of the ring. Frodo is forced to leave the Shire, something he does just in the nick of time, as the ring wraiths have arrived, sniffing about for Baggins. Is there anything similar at all in the Rings of Power? Galadriel finds a symbol on her dead brother, and she finds it again in icy ruins, and she thinks maybe Sauron's still around? That's a catalyst for her grand adventure. At least the Harfoots have a mystery man falling from the sky. Well, Harfoots also suck, by the way. But nothing has really happened since except more mystery. Elrond setting off on diplomatic mission to the dwarves is hardly as interesting as Bilbo changing his mind and running after Thorin's company. And while it seemed Bronwyn and Arondir might be off to their own grand adventure after fighting appearances of a single scary orc, what we've gotten instead is a sorry excuse for a Helm's Deep knockoff, as a group of unpleasant villagers sit around waiting for an army of orcs to attack. And they don't even get me started on how massive army of orcs has gone unnoticed this entire time, despite Galadriel relentlessly pursuing Sauron for centuries. When she could have simply gone to the Hall of Law in Numenor and used the reverse image search tool to find out everything she needed to know. You continue on, look at this article. I talked about this briefly on a live stream this weekend. Rings of Power wasn't built for the water cooler, and that's okay. We're over 6 hours into the Rings of Power show, and you have a journalist writing this article. It is literally 1,000 words of cope. That's okay. You think Jeff Bezos spent $1 billion, spent $60 million an episode and is okay with nobody talking about his show. I mean, I was watching a Nerdrotic video today, and he mentioned a great point. Where are all the new YouTube channels that have popped up talking about all the ins and outs of the show? Certainly that's happened many times with maybe Game of Thrones, for example, other popular shows. The only people talking about Rings of Power right now are dunking on it. I don't think that that's actually okay. Like, Steve Green, how much did they pay you to write this? Like, literally. Why is House of the Dragon so much buzzier than Rings of Power? Because, I mean, even though House of Dragon has some cringe woke kind of undertones, it's still a well-written show. And pretty well acted. Based on people's opinions that I trust, and based on clips I've seen, and just based on the coverage, the media coverage. And the fact that it has like close to a 9 out of 10 rating from both critics and fans. You just see, crucially, House of Dragon might just be better TV. A lot of it is down to some star power and well-written characters. Prime along them is Westeros' biggest, baddest sad boy, Daemon Targaryen. He's easy to hate, but he's more fun to love. He flies dragons. He seduces women. He gets good haircuts. I mean, they're just better characters. It is still, of course, early for both blockbusters. Early? We're 6 episodes in. Why do we keep talking about it being early? It's too late. When you have people memeing like how bad your CG is, I mean, what? Is this show going to get any better? People are saying to me like, dude, just stop watching, stop hate watching. I'm actually getting close. It's still tough though, because I loved Lord of the Rings. I'm not like a Tolkien super fan who's read, every little piece he's ever written, but that trilogy was like, I don't want to say life-changing because that's baloney and that's hyperbole, but like, it was like, I remember those movies. You know what I mean? Even Paul Tassi, who's definitely defended the show, there are slow burns, and then there is the Rings of Power. This was written yesterday. One pushback is that I'm not appreciating the slow burn of the Rings of Power, but there are slow burns, and there's whatever the heck is going on here. And yes, I do believe there's such a thing as too slow. This is not to say that Rings of Power can improve over time. I'm reminded of one of my favorite series, The Expanse, which struggled with an early adaptation issues and pacing in season 1, but blossomed into an all-time great sci-fi series in later seasons. But the Rings of Power seems almost cursed by its sprawling, greenlit 40-hour arc, 4 times the length of the entire original Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I also imagine would not have been nearly as good if it was bloated and stretched that much. Something is missing here, and I hope future seasons can find it. Well, I think they're only going to have a second season. If they don't get cracking, like before this season's over, they're not running 5 seasons. There's no way. You'd be throwing good money after bad. It's going to be interesting to see. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.